Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for the Massachusetts Project Lead the Way Grant webinar. We're so excited to have you here. And I'm Catherine Scriban from the Mass STEM Hub, and I'm also joined by my colleagues, Mary and Callie, who will be helping out today from Project Lead the Way. We have three objectives for the webinar today, and I changed up order looking at who is joining us. So I'm going to introduce Mass STEM Hub and share about the Massachusetts Project Lead the Way plan. And then I'll go into some specifics about the grant opportunity and answer questions. And then for the couple of you who based on registration and school names look to be new to Project Lead the Way, Mary and I will stick around. And Mary Letourneau, who's the Director of School Engagement for Project Lead the Way, would be happy to provide more detail about PLTW and also share any program-specific questions that you all have. But being mindful of the composition of the group, didn't want to have the full Project Lead the Way intro, since many of our attendees today are familiar with the program. Two quick process points. One, that as an attendee, you all are in listen-only mode. And so on the right of your screen, there's a box that you can enter questions. You can chat to us, and Callie will be monitoring that. So if you have questions, you'll be she'll flag them for us, and we can either answer them along the way, or again, we'll have some time at the end to answer questions so we can be sure that folks get the answers that they need today. So with that, wanted to jump in. So first, as you may or may not know, Mass STEM Hub, program of the 1-8 Foundation, partners with schools to implement high-quality programming like Project Lead the Way. Our mission is to provide access to and support for high-quality applied learning programs, right, that are engaging students and preparing them for our rapidly changing world. Concretely, what does this mean? What in the world do we do? And I think about our work in three steps. First, we find high quality programs that have been shown to work for students, right? And that way, we're a bit like a clearinghouse, right? Helping to connect schools to programs that are worth their time and prevent them from having to create everything from scratch. As a former high school math teacher myself, I'm a big fan of giving teachers resources and supports and not making them sort of reinvent the wheel on their own. Second part of our work is determining what schools need to implement these programs with fidelity. And we sort of, I imagine we've all been part of an implementation or a new initiative where we were, new to the work and trying to get it in and underway in any way possible, and not totally understanding all the ins and outs of the program. And so that's our job, to figure out what it takes to do the work well and make sure schools have that guidance and the resources for high quality adoption. One of those things for Project Lead the Way being startup grants. And then third, we use our vantage points of working across the state and across schools to develop complementary programming to supercharge the impact, right? That will take these proven national programs and make them feel local and tailor to the Massachusetts context. So we've identified Project Lead the Way as our first program that we are scaling and supporting here in Massachusetts. And as I mentioned, Mary's happy to provide more detail about Project Lead the Way, but wanted to provide the quick high level for folks insofar as its context for the grant, and also share from the Mass STEM Hub Foundation perspective really what caught our eye about Project Lead the Way. And so the first thing, after months of diligence and research, we firmly believe that Project Lead the Way is one of the most comprehensive and effective programs in the country. And I think it stands out for four big reasons. First, comprehensive K-12 offering, right? It's aligned to standards and those in-demand skills that have been identified by higher ed and employers as what students need to be successful. Two, it's rigorous applied learning, right? It is hands-on. You walk into a Project Lead the Way classroom and it's not silent rows and columns. It is students, tinkering, building, doing work, failing. It's really a different approach to instruction and to learning. Three is the effective teacher PD. really preparing teachers for the content and the instructional shift required by this hands-on learning. And the fourth and final reason that Project Lead the Way really jumped out to Mass STEM Hub and the 1-8 Foundation is the impact that's been validated by research. So 25 plus studies that have shown when implemented with fidelity, Project Lead the Way can have big impact on achievement, higher education measures, and other student impact, right? So it's been shown to increase math and science scores. When we look at higher ed, increases college going, persistence in college, and pursuing a STEM major. All things that we find really important and just incredibly impressed again by Project Lead the Way's research base. There are over 200 schools here in Massachusetts, and from a grant webinar perspective, I put this on the page to flag a couple things. Really excited that Project Lead the Way is working in all different types of schools across the state of Massachusetts. And I think for those of you who are new to the program, please don't hesitate to reach out, get in touch. I'm sure we can put you in touch with a school that is close by or feels similar to you to talk with someone to potentially see it in action. So again, this is a growing community with over 200 schools here in the Commonwealth. This work is being driven by a partnership between WPI, Project Lead the Way, and Mass STEM Hub. Our charge is to help grow and expand PLTW here in the state. And schools using the Project Lead the Way K-12 curriculum have the opportunity to be a part of a network of schools in Massachusetts that have access to additional opportunities. WPI provides ongoing training and networking opportunity in addition to the core training for teachers in the summer. And Mass STEM Hub is working to build an ecosystem, a community of schools, teachers, industry, higher ed partners to provide enrichment activities and supports around Project Lead the Way programs. And what does that look like? I have some pictures here on slide 8 that just highlight some of the work that we've been doing the last 2 years to really build this over and above programming, right? Connections to industry, teacher PD, student events aligned to the curriculum, right? You see a master teacher working alongside a teacher. Top right-hand corner is one of our graduating seniors last year at our STEM signing day. Teachers wanted to have an opportunity to celebrate the hard work of their high schoolers. So borrowing from the athletics tradition, we put together a STEM signing day. That was a ton of fun. And then you also see pictures from some of our student events where kids are sharing work that they've created during their Project Lead the Way classes, or are using the knowledge and skills that they're building in Project Lead the Way, working alongside industry partners. So you see a shot from our hackathon from the Greater Boston Food Bank, and also the showcase with Boston Children's Hospital for our students in design and modeling who develop prototypes of therapeutic toys. So we work to provide this programming and support that would be extremely challenging for schools to do independently, but we're able to do at scale across schools across the state. So that's just a little sort of quick intro about Mass STEM Hub and setting some context for the Project Lead the Way work here in Massachusetts. I think it's helpful sort of background as we think about the grant opportunity and some of the specifics of the grant program. Great. So let's dive in. First, we have tremendous momentum behind the Project Lead the Way community, as I shared, thanks in large part to the grant funding and support from the state and the matching support from the 1-8 Foundation, as well as industry partners like Verizon, GE, BNY Mellon. This marks the third year for the Massachusetts Project Lead the Way grant opportunity. Over the past 2 years, we've awarded $1.7 million to over 100 schools across the state. The grant, known as the STEM High Quality Career Pathway Capacity Grant, supports teacher professional development and provides instructional technology and other related equipment. The STEM High Quality Career Pathway Capacity Grant is overseen by the Executive Office of Education in conjunction with the STEM Advisory Council and the Governor's Workforce Skills Cabinet. The STEM Advisory Council serves as a coordinating entity, bringing together participants from state agencies, the legislature, and members of the public and private sectors involved in STEM education and planning and programming. And so funding from the state and 1/8 and these industry partners provide for this coming year over $1 million of funding for schools to grow and expand their Project Lead the Way programs beginning in the 2019-20 school year. So this year's grant looks to replicate what we've done in previous years. So I think at the highest level, in terms of eligibility, it's open to all public schools, K-12. So that's current schools to expand current programs, right? Add classes or modules or increase student participation. It's open to current Project Lead the Way schools to adopt new programs. So maybe there's a high school that has an engineering program and you could add computer science, biomed. Maybe it's a K-8 school and there's launch and you want to add gateway at the middle school. And it's also open to brand new schools to adopt Project Lead the Way for the first time. In terms of eligibility, there are also two sort of competitive preference possibilities. And so competitive preference will be given to schools with a significant percentage of students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. And we'll also give competitive preference to districts that are building out pathways across schools. So those pathways K-12, 6-12, K-8. The Lieutenant Governor pushed us all to think about pathways at the conference on Friday, providing high quality STEM programming to students year over year. And so those are two places where we'll be providing competitive preference this year for schools. In terms of which programs, again, all Project Lead the Way programs. So the launch program, which is pre-K to 5, Gateway in the middle school, grades 6 to 8, and then the high school engineering, biomedical science, and computer science programs are all eligible for the grant. So what makes a compelling grant application? Wanted to share at a high level and sort of what will set applications apart. And the first is meaningful and sustained exposure. As I shared, the Lieutenant Governor pushed us all at the Project Lead the Way conference on Friday to build pathways for our students and provide sustained STEM experiences. A 2-week or a 6-week experience in the 6th grade, no matter how great it is not enough to spark an interest in STEM and build the skills and knowledge needed to be successful in a STEM major or career. Compelling applications will provide exposure to students over time. At the school level, this means Project Lead the Way in every grade, and ideally at the district level, a full K-12 pathway. We also see this being incredibly powerful, particularly for high school programs, to see more representative student programs. And so when we look at high schools that have middle school feeders, we see more young women signing up for engineering and more students of color and students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds signing up and participating at the high school level if they've had these experiences K-8. The second piece is student participation. We want to increase access to students across the Commonwealth and are looking for programs that reach significant number of students. At the K-8 level, this means targeting, well, let me back up. At the elementary level, this means targeting 100% participation for students. At the middle school level, this is 75 to 100% of students. And at the high school level, 15 to 25% of students completing a 3-course pathway. We understand that this will not happen in year 1 automatically. So the grant calls for a 3-year plan, right? So this both the meaningful and sustained student exposure and the plan for significant student participation can happen over time. Folks can build to that sort of level of programming. Third important piece is teacher and leader champions. From our research into programs here in Massachusetts and around the country, having a school leader, a teacher champion, and a district leader are critical to ensure the program has the resources and the attention that it needs. right? Leaders are building it into the schedule, creating the space, encouraging student participation, supporting teachers. And teachers need to understand what Project Lead the Way is and be excited for this hands-on type of learning, right? And so we, on the second part of the grant application, will ask schools explicitly to name their school, district, and teacher leader champions. The last thing is plan to financially sustain the program. And so again, the grant is intended to help defray the startup costs of the program. And we're looking to support schools to get this high quality programming in front of their students. And so one of the critical questions that we'll be sort of zeroing in on is that plan to sustain the program after the life of the grant. Part 2 of the grant application will ask for a budget. And so I wanted to take a minute here to talk a little bit about that budget and potential grant size. And so to be sort of totally transparent and candid, we are expecting that the vast majority of schools will fall right around the standard grant size. And so you'll see in the table on the right, the standard grant size. So launch $7,500, Gateway, the middle school program at $20,000, high school computer science at $20,000, high school engineering at $35,000, and high school biomedical science at $35,000. That said, we recognize that schools are different, implementation plans are different, and we have the flexibility to increase grant size for more robust implementation, right? So things that could flex that number up, the number of students reached at the school level, the number of modules, units, and courses offered, and the number of teachers trained. And so for those schools that are looking to go above and beyond, maybe not scale up to 100% participation at a middle school, but start with 100% participation. That requires more teachers to be trained and more materials to be purchased right off the bat, right? Those more robust implementations are the real driving factor to what could lead a school to flex up from that standard amount. Another important point on this slide is the fund disbursement and timing. So we'll be looking for a 3-year plan, and because of the way the funding is set up from the state and the sort of different pools of money that it's pulling from, the funding will actually be paid out over 2 years, but will be to support a 3-year program. As I mentioned, grants are intended to cover startup costs associated with a new program or a significant expansion, and are looking for schools to build in the ongoing costs to sustain the program right from the start. So specifically, this means that the grant covers, or the allowable expenses, include that core training for teachers, the program required durable equipment and supplies, so those pieces of equipment and those supplies that can be used year over year in a course, and in some instances, the computers and or tablets required. There is a cap to these that is in the grant itself. Our intention here is that this is not a capital grant, and so if there are really significant computer and hardware needs, let us know, and we can think about some alternative funding sources to help support that. So on the unallowable expenses, those first two, participation fee and consumables, those are ongoing costs of the program. And so those are unallowable expenses for the grant, right? To establish schools planning and paying for those ongoing costs right from the start. Additionally, the grant doesn't cover salaries or stipends, meals, infrastructure, indirect costs. And this final note here, equipment or supplies listed as optional on the Project Lead the Way website. That I want to be really clear here, includes 3D printers. Again, our goal is to help increase student access across the Commonwealth, and so thinking really critically about allowable and unallowable funds, recognizing 3D printers can be a very powerful instructional tool, but that is just not something covered by this grant. If that is a top priority for you, for your school, please get in touch. There are other grants that we can point you in the direction of that would fund that sort of optional equipment. In terms of requirements, from a programming perspective, we're looking for schools to implement according to their applications, follow best practices that we've identified in our research, and contribute to the statewide initiative. We've tried really hard to limit the additional requirements of the grant. This is not a place where you have to write pages and pages of narrative updates. And instead, we've really tried to align the requirements to implementation of the program according to your plan, some things that are required by Project Lead the Way. So administering your end of course assessments, rostering students, completing training. We push here that it happens at WPI, the in-state training partner, such that we can start to build those connections across schools and amongst teachers right from the very start. And then we've layered on just a few other important community and programming requirements. So attending the annual conference each year, attending a grant convening. This year's date, everyone should be marking in their calendars, Tuesday, March 5th, and our snow date on March 13th. And that's an opportunity for all the schools who do receive a grant to get together, meet one another, and hear from WPI, Project Lead the Way, Mass STEM Hub, about the programming, about the plan, make sure everyone sort of knows all the systems and how everything works. And we'll start onboarding and implementation right then and there. So folks are ready for the summer and ready for the school year. The last two, administering short student and teacher surveys. That's contributing to the 6-year longitudinal study that we have going on of the work. And then finally, there's a simple financial report that needs to be completed annually for the state. So in terms of process, I've alluded, but wanted to take a moment to make it really explicit. There's a 2-part grant application process. So part 1 of the application is the standard Project Lead the Way grant. Can be accessed through my PLTW. It is completed 1 application per school per program. So if you are a district coordinator and you want to apply for 2 elementary schools, you will be completing 2 grant applications, 1 per school. If you're a high school and you want to complete an application for engineering and computer science, right, that'd be 2 different applications, 1 per program. One important note here is that 1 application allows your school to be considered for multiple grant opportunities because part 1 is the standard PLTW grant. So that will be submitted, and we've had Massachusetts schools that may not be funded by the Massachusetts grant opportunity, but have picked up funding from other Project Lead the Way partners because that part 1 is the standard application. That part 1 is due November 16th. On November 30th, we'll notify schools who are moving on, and we'll send them part 2 of the application. Part 2 of the application is completed as a PDF. The 2 big pieces of information that part 2 seeks is 1, additional programming detail. That's where we'll want to see that implementation plan of what classes and how many students, and then also it asks for the grant budget. Those will be due January 9th. So part 1 of the application can be downloaded and accessed right now on my PLTW. Set up a login and can take a look at the application, and that is due November 16th. So in terms of next steps, right, there's visiting the Project Lead the Way website, creating an account so you can access the grant application, starting a plan for what Project Lead the Way programs you might want to offer, and also taking advantage of some Massachusetts specific opportunities, right, reaching out to Mary with questions or myself. We also have a number of tours and info sessions coming up, which could be a great thing to join. So next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we have some tours seeing high school programs and elementary and middle school programs. And then the following week, have a middle school, high school tour set up in Leominster. If you also have colleagues who are looking to get involved, right, a tour would be a great place. We'll host another webinar on the 29th We'll also have an info session at WPI on the 31st. So with that, I want to pause and see if folks have any questions for the group. Remember that chat box there, just typing a message will turn it right over to us. Okay. Please, 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 happy to share any questions. Okay. Well, if there aren't any questions, happy to say that if there is anything that we can do to help support, I'm going to flash up my contact information, Catherine Scrivan from Mass STEM Hub, as well as Mary Letourneau's from Project Lead the Way. We have the tours. Also happy to set up a phone call or come visit you in your district at your school to chat. I'll say of the 100+ applications we received last year, I think between the two of us, Mary and I met or spoke with almost every single one of them. And so this is a time where we would love to offer more help, not less. Don't want folks to have questions or to be navigating the website all by themselves. And so please don't hesitate to get in touch, either with questions or to set up a time to chat and to connect. Happy to do whatever makes the most sense.
I don't see any questions, Catherine, so I think we're all good.
All right. So again, thank you all so much for coming. And if there are any questions or anything we can do, pausing a little bit here to make sure folks are taking a picture or copying down contact information, and please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye.